I want to thank Tom, not only for the envelope, but for the introduction. I've come to know Tom as prescient, panoptic, a stellar person, affable, amicable, a leader, a vigorous person. Tom, I can't keep reading this stuff you've written. And Brant, I took your assignment from earlier today to heart, listening for nuggets and useful pieces of information I could use. And I will say to Patrick, there's good news and bad news. I enjoyed your presentation. The good news is I appreciated the weather report from Toronto about how cold it is, because I'm in Paris and it was actually hot today in Paris. So I have escaped the Toronto winter. I would also say that when I get my presentation up, if everyone would please click on the first slide and enter the top 3 passwords that you like to use, I'll be able to make that part of my presentation later. And since I'm in Paris, I'll mention the Louvre heist that you heard about a while back. I have it on good authority that the Louvre's password for more than 10 years was the word Louvre. So that kind of says it all. Cyber issues are usually because someone does something he or she shouldn't, or doesn't do something he or she should. And then finally, Patrick inspired me to think that not only are there so many different standards there, and there are also ones in Europe, including the Tallinn Manual, and there are treaties on the order paper at the UN from, of all people, the Russians, the Chinese, the African states. You will hear in my presentation that when you have so many different systems and jargon that Patrick mentioned, you essentially have no system, I submit. Don't dot the I's and cross the T's with journalists. One night on the late TV news, I had written that the on-again, off-again fire station was on again. It had been scheduled or budgeted or something for renovation or demolition or rebuild, and then canceled and then started again. So I called it on again, off again. I got a call from a cabinet minister telling me he didn't like that terminology. I don't know what terminology he wanted, but he had some loophole where he said, you know, it had only been postponed and not canceled and on and on. Well, I think what you do is you look at the big picture and say, maybe if you want more information about the fire station or its budgeting or what have you, I'm happy to give it to you, but it's always been scheduled or something like that. But don't dot the I's, don't cross the T's, stick to the big picture. And I'd also say, great that you mentioned the term risk communication. A while back when I did a book on urban emergency plans, I read 100 of the top urban emergency plans in the world. And the 2 words that are not in any plan whatsoever are the words risk communication. And as you know, this is a field of academic research that goes back to the 1970s, where people like Fishoff, Sandman, Covello, and others pioneered the conveyance of information about risk to human health to a lay audience. No mention of it whatsoever in communications plan. And the other words that rarely exist, maybe twice, are the words public transit. Interesting. And I'm also reminded of the demographic group because I was rifling through the drawer here and I found numerous pairs of glasses. So obviously you have older speakers. Yeah, I wouldn't argue in the slightest that this is a deleterious manifestation of modern society. I'm not sure if we're losing free will, but I won't debate that point. But you asked a question, what do we do? Okay, yes. Well, what did we do 100 years ago when newspapers sold more copies than there were people who lived in that community? They sold more because people got one at home in the morning, one at the office, and then they had an afternoon edition. What did you do when you opened up page 13 and it was the prize-winning pie from the fall fair and the prize-winning dog from the dog show and all that kind of stuff? Well, if you were interested in that, you stayed there, but otherwise the solution, Haley, is you licked your thumb and you turned the page. And if it was the social column where Mrs. Bloggins had just returned from a trip to Parsborough, where she saw a play and reminded herself of the Dulce production in Nova Scotia, you lick your thumb and turn the page. And this is the fortitude, in my view, that we have to have if we're going to be what was termed, when all this was, well thought of, we had to be our own editors. Well, an editor at a newspaper or a radio station or a TV station is constantly throwing stuff in the garbage, literally and figuratively.
Typical Toronto intersection with unsightly overhead wires and streetcar tracks. Here are some of the other problems. Pop-down menus, pop-up menus. Small text that you can't read, probably violating the Persons with Disability Acts. The text goes off the page. There are maps with no street names. Can you imagine how helpful that is? Here's a map. Unexplained terminology, turn around, don't drown. I thought that meant if there's a tsunami, you turn around and let the water hit you in the back. But no, it means get out of the danger area. In Calgary and St. Catharines, they refer to things that are defined in the annex, but the annex is hidden. In Mississauga, their plan forms Schedule A to the current bylaw, see Appendix X. The plan's appendices are confidential, but appendices do not form part of the plan. Any reference to an appendix within the emergency plan is solely for the assistance of the users of the manual. Now, if you were the user of the manual, wouldn't that be of great assistance? I'm reminded of what Attorney General Bobby Kennedy said during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Canada was willing to provide all possible assistance short of any actual help.
But I would reiterate, the viewing time of television screens was very similar to the viewing time, by most studies, of these portable screens. And I would ask, what is the difference, and engage in the form and meaning debate.